Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour may be one of the most misunderstood pieces of software in recent memory. As a punching bag for the Switch 2's Drop the Price social media campaign, it was dismissed as a $10 instruction manual for the Switch 2 that should have been included for free. Let me preface this review by saying that I agree that it should have been made available for free, but it is not just a simple instruction manual, but a piece of educational software with some elements of play. It is not a game in a traditional sense, but an interactive museum tour, with a virtual Switch 2 itself functioning as the museum. This is why I refer to it as a piece of software, not as a game. Now, I know the $10 price tag is controversial, with the Nintendo of the past offering bundled software like Wii Sports with the Wii, Face Raiders with the 3DS, and Nintendo Land for the Wii U. Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour on the surface looks like a prime candidate for a bundled game or a free download. I think if it were offered as a freebie, people would be a lot more forgiving towards it, and may see it for what it is instead of immediately dismissing it. For the sake of this review, I'm putting the price controversy aside and reviewing Welcome Tour on its own merit. Then at the end of the review, I'll circle back to the price and weigh up if it is worth $10 after all. Welcome Tour actually really surprised me, and I came away having a delightful, mostly positive experience. In this review, I'll clarify what Welcome Tour is, who it's for, and what curious players should expect. By the end, you'll know if it's something you want to play or if it's something you should skip. So, let's get started. Right from the beginning, it's clear that Welcome Tour will be full of that Wii, 3DS, Wii U era Nintendo charm that seems to have vanished over the Switch era. I'm not saying that's a bad thing, it's just an observation. Modern Nintendo really does prioritize consumer enjoyment, with its big flashy IPs doing the heavy lifting. What I mean by feeling like that old era, I'm talking about the clean white pristine backgrounds of the Wii menu, the very minimalist user interfaces, the lame jokes and forced memes of Nintendo Directs, the type of Nintendo that is now in the background but used to be front and center. Anyway, Welcome Tour starts with very minimalist characters lining up to enter the museum, and you pick out the one you want to play as. It's quirky, unexpected, and exudes that bizarre Nintendo charm of old that will be seen throughout the following 5 to 6 hours of playtime. The first area to check out is the left Joy-Con 2, and it's here you'll learn the basics of Welcome Tour. Being a Japanese museum exhibition-inspired game, of course there's a stamp rally, a staple of life here in Japan. You have to walk around the Joy-Con 2 and later other pieces of hardware to find the hidden stamps, which are found at points of interests like the control stick, face buttons, or magnetic release button. Each stamp station contains a factoid about the object in question. Once you've collected all the stamps, you are granted access to the next area. But there's still more to it than that. In each area, you'll have to take quizzes, as well as play tech demos and mini-games. Let me start with the quizzes. The quizzes have a series of text windows you have to read for you to learn about the design process of a Switch 2 component. For example, an early one is about how the motion sensors work in the Joy-Con 2. These text boxes are accompanied by videos and animations, and text is kept succinct. These animations and videos are clean and pristine like the overall production, and really well done. If this sounds boring to you, I totally understand. Not everyone needs to know how and why the Switch 2 does what it does, but if you have an interest in Nintendo design philosophy, or a curiosity about what is going on inside the Switch 2, then you will absolutely love this. I learned so much about the Switch 2 hardware, and as someone from a non-technical background, I found it surprisingly easy to understand, as it's broken down in an easily digestible and well-presented manner. After you've read all the text and watched the videos, it's time to take the quiz. Now, the quizzes were not particularly challenging, but actually very funny. They take the form of multiple choice questions, and usually the correct answers are obvious. As an example, the quiz about the Switch 2's mouse mode had one of the answers to the question, in what way can you play games using the Joy-Con 2 mouse controls, as by nibbling on cheese. It's that old school, quirky, funny, lame, bizarre Nintendo humor at play. There are a lot of joke answers in this game, and most of them straddle the line between being dad humor and being genuinely funny. Whoever wrote these and or translated them into English was clearly having a lot of fun. But the most important part of this is that it made education, or the process of learning, fun. Here, Welcome Tour really succeeds as a piece of edutainment software, educating the player but never boring them. And for me, the educational content itself was surprisingly compelling, as I learnt so much about the Switch 2's design process. I learned why one of the dock's rubber feet is slightly different, that there's a small amount of water inside the Switch 2, and the surprising place the magnetic connectors are hidden in the Joy-Con 2. I found a lot of it mind-blowing and gained a deeper respect for Nintendo's engineering department. They really cooked with this console, and I felt that all this information helped justify the Switch 2 console's rather high asking price. I do not envy Nintendo's engineers at all, as I realized this piece of consumer electronics is way more sophisticated than I thought, perhaps more than a lot of other devices on the market. But like I said, I'm a non-technical person, so your mileage may vary on this. Now let's get into the tech demos and mini-games. The tech demos don't have many gameplay elements, they really are just demos, but like some of the facts in the quiz, these demonstrate the technology outright, and add to that mind-blowing feeling I alluded to. The microphone tech demo asks you to run a vacuum cleaner or hairdryer in the background and speak into the mic. It will play back your voice with noise cancellation, and I was floored at just how flawless the noise cancellation in this system is. It also showed off HD Rumble 2, which is an insane upgrade from the Switch 1's HD Rumble. HD Rumble 2 finally offers what we were promised 8 years ago, and it does feel like there are little objects rattling around inside the Joy-Con 2. There's a demo involving maracas, and you can shake around one maraca with one big ball inside it, and another with 100 little balls inside, and feel the difference in vibration. It really feels like you're holding two different objects. It also demonstrates how HD Rumble 2 can be used to make a sound, so it played the Mario coin and 1-up sound effects using only controller vibration. Just incredible stuff. But where Welcome Tour lets us down a bit is the mini-games. These are fun little distractions, but not much more. They show off what the Switch 2 can do, but none are particularly hard, and none have the level of replayability that Wii Sports or Wii Play or Nintendo Land had. The one where you use the mouse to control a UFO to dodge spike balls is fun for 5 minutes max. Some other games you can clear in less than that. Some are amusing in the way they show off the Switch 2's capabilities and have you play in playstyles you never would have considered. An example being one where you have to use the Switch 2's kickstand and angle the console itself at the angle displayed on screen. Victory being earned from being close enough to the required angle. Nobody ever would have considered using the screen angle as an input method, but Nintendo did it. Amusing to a huge degree, but hardly necessary. And some mini games are just tedious and annoying. There's a later one where you have to use both Joy-Con 2s as mice and replicate doing the breaststroke on a surface in front of you. It's like the worst of Wii motion control games back 20 years later, and was just tiring, easily screw-upable, and not fun at all. Minigames are a real mixed bag in terms of fun gameplay, but uniformly weak in terms of presentation. They're very clean and pristine, but without many unique assets or visually creative elements, so they come across as little more than flash games. I know the point of Welcome Tour as a whole is to be a piece of easily digestible educational software about the Switch 2, but coming from the biggest game developer on the planet, I expected a little more fun to be had and a little more creativity to be put on display in this department. Completing tech demos and games grants you medals, and the more medals you have, you'll be granted the chance to play more difficult variations of mini-games. 100%ing Welcome Tour requires collecting all stamps, clearing all quizzes, earning all medals, and returning every piece of lost property to be found in the exhibit. The lost property is another fun Nintendo quirk. Each area has a pair of sunglasses or hat or similar lying around for you to pick up and return to the front counter. There's really no reason for this little questline to be here, but it's just a wacky Nintendo style silly little bonus. Sometimes you can find the NPC who lost the item, who gives you a little bit of humorous dialogue. For example, an NPC by the cooling fan says, "Oh no, my hat blew away," because the cooling fan had blown it to the other side of the room. Unnecessary but funny and charming nonetheless. Now about those medals, this is where we encounter a major sticking point. The game is not 100%able without having certain accessories, those being a Switch 2 Pro controller or charging grip that have the GLGR buttons, a camera, and a 4K TV. While I had the Pro controller, the one minigame that required it was no problem for me, but I didn't buy the Switch 2 camera, which is not technically required as you can use even the most basic of readily available USB cameras, but I don't have a USB camera lying around, so I couldn't play the camera game either. And finally, I don't have a 4K TV, so I couldn't play play the demo of Super Mario Bros. World 1-1 running in 4K. While the overall completion of Welcome Tour isn't gated off behind these games, and you can still have the full edutainment experience without them, as there is an option to skip them and still get the medals. But as a completionist gamer, it's disappointing I can't properly 100% this game that I paid for. You better believe I'll be circling back to this when I weigh up the $10 price tag. Even without those mini-games, there's still a lot of content here. The music is also delightful. Nintendo didn't skimp on that either. It'll take about 5 to 6 hours to complete the whole tour, and there's only a very small amount of replayability if for some reason you really loved those mini-games. So let's start to tie it all together. Who exactly is this game for? I think the audience for this game will be very, very small. I think if you find yourself at the center of a Venn diagram that has lifelong Nintendo fan in one circle, keen interest in engineering and design philosophy in another, and not easily bored by educational software in the last one, then you will certainly enjoy Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, and I'm fortunate enough to find myself there. But if you don't fall in the center, or even between two of the other circles, you will not find much to enjoy here, and even if it were free, you'd probably put it down in less than 10 minutes. Despite being front and center at a console launch, this is a very niche piece of software, and even if it were free, very few people would actually finish it. Wii Sports or Nintendo Land Welcome Tour most certainly is not. So is it worth $10? Well, unless you're at the center of that Venn diagram, then no, not at all. But even if you are, you still will not be able to shake the feeling that it should have been a freebie. There's not much on offer to justify that $10 price tag, as there's not that much that's fun to play as a game. And don't forget that you cannot fully experience everything in Welcome Tour without an additional controller, USB camera, and 4K TV. But if you are curious, then think of it like what it purports to be, an interactive museum exhibit. Would you pay $10 for a museum exhibit on something you're interested in real life? I've paid more for museum exhibitions here in Tokyo, so in that sense, Welcome Tour is better value, as it kept me engaged for 6 hours, whereas a real-life museum exhibit will keep me entertained for less than 1. To wrap this up, if you fit within all the metrics I've discussed, that is to say what your interests are and what accessories you have, then Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour will be worth 10 of your hard-earned dollars. But if you don't align with these metrics, which I'm sure is the case for a lot of you guys, then you're better off skipping it. While I still think it should have been free, I can kinda see Nintendo's rationale behind charging for it. A lot of effort was put into making this piece of software, but the demand for it will be quite low anyway. This is a product purely for the Nintendo faithful. It's not an engaging game for the masses like bundled games of the past. While I see the rationale, I don't agree with it. I think a better option would have been to have made Welcome Tour free for the first year, or as a bonus for Nintendo Switch Online users, as the biggest longtime Nintendo fans are all buying the Switch 2 at launch. Then later make it charged for late adopters to recoup some of the cost. That would have mitigated the $10 price controversy at the very least. But considering everything I've said, did Nintendo really even need to make this software? Probably not, but I'm glad they did. It's a future historic artifact of the Switch 2 generation, and YouTube being what it is, Nintendo YouTubers 10 years from now will be saying Welcome Tour is a misunderstood masterpiece, that we just didn't get it at the time, in the same way YouTubers now seemingly love the Wii U and miss that era of Nintendo. So if you're a lifelong Nintendo fan who misses the quote-unquote old Nintendo and is curious about what's under the hood of the Switch 2 and who is willing to part with $10, then go off King, download Welcome Tour. You won't regret getting a rare peek behind the Nintendo curtain. If that's not you, you probably won't find much to enjoy. While I personally love the goofy and wacky Nintendo charm to be found in this piece of edutainment, I know it's not going to be the case for everyone. For better or worse, this is a really weird product to be launching alongside the Switch 2, and it will eventually find a loyal cult following, but for most gamers, entirely worthy of skipping. So thanks for watching to the end. What do you think of Welcome Tour? Have you played it? Will you play it? Or will you skip it? Let me know in the comments down below. I read and reply to all of them. With the Switch 2 generation underway, I'm looking forward to covering more upcoming game releases in this nuanced, at-length style, so please consider subscribing if that's something you'd like to see. I also did a review of Mario Kart World, so feel free to check that one out as well. On the June 15th episode of the Tokyo Game Life podcast, I appeared as a guest discussing these two games and jokingly awarded Welcome Tour a 10 out of 10. I've left a link to it in the description, so check that out if you want to hear about how the Switch 2 launch went down in Japan, as well as more discussion on Mario Kart World and Welcome Tour. So have a good one, take care, and I'll see you next time.